Amara had always been the woman others envied. At just 32, she had built a reputation as a respected event planner in Lagos. Her business flourished, her name opened doors, and her beauty commanded attention wherever she went. To the outside world, she had it all: a thriving career, a beautiful daughter, and a seemingly devoted husband, Chike. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Benny's Stories, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up, so you'll never miss more powerful folk tales like this. But behind closed doors, Amara's life wasn't as flawless as a glossy Instagram post suggested. Chike had become distant, dismissive of her efforts, and quick to anger over the smallest things. Yet, whenever friends or family were around, he transformed into the doting husband, charming, affectionate, and protective. This duality gnawed at Amara, but she kept silent. After all, people would never believe her as she said the man who called her queen in public treated her like a burden in private. So, she clung to the facade, convincing herself things would get better. What Amara didn't know was that Chike was hiding more than just his coldness. He had secrets buried deep, secrets that would one day detonate everything she thought she knew about him. And the first spark would come from betrayal, not by him, but by someone she trusted most. If Amara trusted anyone outside her family, it was a best friend, Ifema. They had been inseparable since university, sisters in all but blood. Ifema were vivacious, bold, and endlessly supportive, or so Amara believed. Whenever Chike pulled away, it was Ifema who reassured her. Whenever she doubted herself, it was Ifema who reminded her of her worth. But beneath that loyal smile, Ifema nursed a dangerous envy. For years she had lived in Amara's shadow, less successful, less admired, less loved, and worst of all, she secretly desired Chike. Chike noticed. At first, he ignored her subtle glances and lingering touches, but temptation whispered louder with time. A casual dinner invitation turned into private conversations, and those conversations spiraled into something Amara never imagined possible. When Amara confided in Ifema about Chike's growing distance, Ifema pretended to comfort her, all the while knowing she was a reason. To Ifema, this wasn't betrayal. It was a long-awaited victory, proof that she could take what Amara valued most. But victory always comes at a price. The unraveling began one late evening. Amara had finished decorating a wedding venue and returned home early, expecting to surprise Chike with his favorite meal. Instead, she was the one surprised. Her phone buzzed with an anonymous message: "Check your husband's car. The truth is parked inside." Curiosity burned hotter than caution. Amara walked out, heart pounding, and there, in the back seat of Chike's car, she found a silk scarf, one she had seen before. It was Ifema's. The scent of Ifema's perfume clung to it like a cool reminder. Shock rippled through her, but denial rose quickly. Maybe Ifema borrowed the car. Maybe Chike was giving her a ride. She clung desperately to excuses, but deep down, she knew the scarf wasn't just fabric. It was evidence, a symbol that her world was crumbling. Amara didn't confront them immediately. Instead, she chose silence, watching closely, collecting fragments of truth while plotting her next move. For the first time, she realized her silence wasn't weakness. It was power. Ifema didn't stop at stealing moments with Chike. She wanted dominance. What was victory if no one knew you had won? It started small, subtle pictures on Instagram stories, captions that hinted at inside jokes. Amara's sharp eyes noticed the same wristwatch on Chike's arm in Ifema's posts. Then, one night, the betrayal exploded in public. At a high-profile gala Amara organized, she spotted Chike and Ifema slipping out together. Hours later, photographs of them, cozy in the parking lot, flooded social media. The humiliation was unbearable. Calls poured in, messages of pity disguised as concern, and whispers echoed in her professional circles. Amara's career, built on elegance, trust, and an image of a perfect life, trembled under the weight of gossip. Betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional, public, and merciless. But as Ifema basked in her hollow triumph, and Chike gloated over his control, Amara quietly began to rise from the ashes. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. While Amara nursed her pain in silence, she began to notice cracks in Chike's own facade. He wasn't as invincible as he portrayed. Whispers reached her ears about shady business deals, unexplained absences, and debts hidden from view. One evening, while Chike was in the shower, Amara stumbled across his laptop. A folder labeled confidential caught her eye. Inside were documents that revealed everything: fraudulent contracts, embezzled funds, and even blackmail letters from dangerous people he had crossed. Her hands trembled as she realized the truth. Chike's betrayal wasn't just emotional. He had built his life on lies and crimes that could destroy not only him but everyone tied to him, including her and their daughter. In that moment, Amara's pain transformed into resolve. Ifema thought she had won by taking Chike, but she had unknowingly tied herself to a man whose empire was on the verge of collapse. Amara's silence ended that night. She wouldn't just survive this betrayal. She would turn his secrets into the very weapon that would bring both Chike and Ifema crashing down. Amara spent days pretending to be broken, giving Chike and Ifema the illusion of victory. On the surface, she looked like a woman defeated, skipping meals, ignoring calls, staying indoors. Neighbors whispered, "She can't handle it," while Ifema gloated, flaunting her stolen prize. But beneath the quiet, Amara was calculating. Every detail in Chike's confidential files became a puzzle piece she arranged carefully. His debts, his fake contracts, his alliances with shady businessmen, all pointed to one undeniable truth: he was living on borrowed time. She realized she had two choices: confront him emotionally and lose everything, or play the long game and reclaim her power. For the first time in years, Amara chose herself. She began gathering allies discreetly: an old lawyer friend, a banker who owed her a favor, and even a cousin working in the police force. If Chike's betrayal looked like victory, Amara's silence was a battlefield where his downfall would begin. Ifema thought she had won. She moved into Chike's life boldly, answering his calls in Amara's presence, posting subtle pictures online, and even wearing jewelry Amara once owned. But her confidence turned reckless. She didn't know that Chike's financial empire was crumbling. To her, he was still the wealthy, connected man she had admired from afar. She boasted to friends about being the real woman in his life, enjoying the attention that came from her new role. Yet cracks appeared. Chike became irritable, snapping at her when she demanded too much. She noticed his late-night meetings, the tension in his eyes, the frequent phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room. The man she thought was her prize was slipping away, consumed by secrets she couldn't yet comprehend. But by the time she realized, it would be too late. Amara had already started weaving the trap that would ensnare them both. Amara's lawyer friend, Cunnel, became her confidant. Over quiet dinners, she shared everything she found on Chike. Cunnel, experienced in corporate fraud, was stunned. "Amara, your husband isn't just unfaithful. He's sitting on a ticking time bomb. If these documents leak, he won't only lose his business, he'll face jail." Amara's heart raced. The thought of her daughter growing up with a father in prison frightened her. But then Cunnel leaned closer. "If you're smart, you can turn this around. Protect yourself legally, secure your assets, and let his enemies do the dirty work." It was the first time Amara felt true hope. For years, she had been Chike's shield, covering for his coldness and his failures. Now, she would protect herself and her daughter first. That night, she began quietly transferring funds into accounts under her name, moving assets, and ensuring that if Chike fell, she and her child wouldn't sink with him. Amara couldn't stay silent forever. One evening, she sat across from Chike at the dinner table, his phone buzzing repeatedly with Ifema's name flashing on the screen. Calmly, she asked, "Is this what victory looks like for you?" Chike smirked. "You've always been too emotional. Amara, Ifema knows how to treat a man." His arrogance dripped like poison, but Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she slid a folder across the table, the document she had copied from his laptop. His face drained of color. For the first time, the confident, domineering Chike looked cornered. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Amara's voice was steady. "Your betrayal wounded me, but this can destroy you. Don't mistake my silence for weakness, Chike. It's the reason you're still sitting here free." He exploded in anger, slamming the table, accusing her of threats. But deep inside, fear crept into his bones. Amara wasn't the broken wife he imagined. She was the storm he hadn't prepared for. Efima's illusion of victory began to crack when she overheard Chike on the phone, begging someone for more time to repay a loan. The man she thought was a golden ticket was entangled in debts and lies. Desperate, she confronted him. "Chike, what's going on? You told me you had everything under control." He snapped. "Shut up, Efima. You think this is about love? You were just convenient." The words pierced her like a knife. She had betrayed her best friend, destroyed her own reputation, only to realize she was disposable. But her pride wouldn't let her admit defeat. Instead, she turned her anger toward Amara, believing Amara was behind Chike's sudden coldness. In her mind, Amara was the enemy standing between her and the life she craved. What Efima didn't know was that Amara wasn't just standing between her and Chike. She was preparing to pull the ground from under both their feet. Amara's confrontation with Chike was only the beginning. After that night, he treated her with thinly veiled hostility. He became suspicious, checking his laptop constantly, keeping his phone locked, and even moving some files to external drives. But it was too late. Amara already had copies. She stayed calm, playing the part of a wounded but resigned wife, while in reality, she was quietly building her fortress. Connell connected her with a financial advisor who helped secure her savings, ensuring Chike couldn't drain her accounts in a fit of spite. Meanwhile, Amara's business continued to flourish. Instead of hiding from society after the scandal, she threw herself into her wake. Her resilience impressed her clients, and her name grew stronger in professional circles. People whispered about her strength, about how she continued to shine despite public humiliation. The tide was shifting. Where once she was pitied, now she was admired. And as Chike's empire began to crack, Amara's star rose higher. Efima was unraveling. The life she thought she had stolen turned into a nightmare. Chike grew colder by the day, his temper quick to ignite, his promises evaporating. Money stopped flowing freely. Instead, he began asking her for loans, claiming it was temporary. Her friends, once envious of her boldness, started mocking her behind her back. She left her sister for scraps, they whispered. Efima's pride, once a weapon, now cut her deeply. In desperation, she turned to Amara, feigning remorse. She appeared at Amara's doorstep, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what happened. Amara, I didn't mean to hurt you. Please forgive me." But Amara's eyes were no longer soft with trust. They were sharp, cold, and unyielding. "You didn't just betray me, Efima. You betrayed yourself. And soon, you'll see that Chike's downfall is the only apology I'll ever accept." For the first time, Efima realized Amara wasn't the fragile woman she expected. She was becoming something far more dangerous. Chike's carefully constructed empire began to collapse publicly. Rumors of fraud leaked into the business community. A former associate, desperate to save himself, exposed Chike's embezzlement scheme to authorities. One by one, his deals fell apart. Investors pulled out, contracts were canceled, and creditors circled like vultures. At home, Chike grew paranoid. He accused Amara of betraying him to the police. "You think you're smart, Amara? You think I don't know you're behind this?" he shouted, his voice trembling with rage. But Amara didn't flinch. "I don't need to destroy you, Chike. You built your own destruction." Behind his rage, fear ate away at him. For years, he had controlled everything: his wife, his mistress, his image. But now, the walls were closing in, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. In a desperate attempt to salvage her dignity, Efima tried to distance herself from Chike. She deleted their pictures, stopped posting subtle hints, and even told friends she had moved on. But it was too late. A tabloid picked up the story, publishing leaked photos of her with Chike at the gala. Headlines screamed, "Business mogul's mistress linked to scandal." Efima's name became synonymous with betrayal, her career prospects ruined, her social circle shrinking. Her so-called victory turned into public shame. She lost clients, lost friends, and worst of all, lost her own sense of self. In desperation, she called Chike, begging for reassurance. But his voice was cold. "I never promised you anything. Efima, you were a convenience. That's all." The line went dead, leaving her alone in the silence of her own choices. Betrayal had looked like victory, but now it tasted like ashes. Amara, meanwhile, continued to rise. She hosted one of the biggest weddings of the year, her work praised across social media. Clients admired not just her talent, but her resilience. She's a woman who cannot be broken, people said. Behind the scenes, Amara finalized legal protections, securing custody of her daughter and ensuring Chike couldn't touch her business assets. Connell filed the necessary paperwork, quietly preparing for the storm that would officially end her marriage. One evening, as she looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully, Amara whispered, "You will never grow up thinking this is love. You will never see me bow to betrayal." For the first time in years, she felt free, not because Chike and Efima had fallen, but because she had risen. Betrayal no longer defined her. Strength did. And while Chike's empire crumbled, Amara began to see a future where his secrets wouldn't haunt her, but destroy him instead. Chike's empire was no longer just cracking, it was collapsing. Police inquiries turned into formal investigations. Banks froze his accounts. Former business partners avoided his calls, fearing they'd be dragged down with him. He stormed into the house one night, eyes bloodshot, shirt undone, rage dripping from every word. "You did this, Amara. You wanted to destroy me." Amara, calm as ever, looked him in the eye. "No, Chike, you destroyed yourself. You built your empire on lies. And lies always collapse." He raised his hand in anger, but stopped midway. For the first time, he realized she wasn't afraid anymore. That shook him more than the investigations. Chike wasn't just fighting external enemies now. He was fighting a woman who had once been his shield, but now stood as his reckoning. Desperate and humiliated, Efima tried one final trick. She approached Amara privately, pretending to extend an olive branch. "Amara, let's stop this. We've both suffered enough. Let's bring him down together." But Amara saw through the act. Efima didn't want justice, she wanted survival. Aligning with Amara was her only way out of the hole she had dug for herself. Amara's reply was chilling. "You chose betrayal, Efima. I chose strength. Don't think we're the same." Word soon spread that Efima was cooperating with investigators, feeding them information about Chike's shady dealings in exchange for leniency. But her attempt to redeem herself backfired. The public labeled her a snitch, adding insult to her already ruined reputation. Her victory had not only crumbled, it had poisoned everything she touched. The day finally came. It was a Saturday morning when police cars pulled up in front of Chike's mansion. Neighbors peeked from their balconies as officers led him out in handcuffs. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Amara stood at the window, her daughter holding her hand. For years, she had endured humiliation in silence. Today, the world saw the truth, not of her weakness, but of his downfall. Chike glared up at her as if she had orchestrated everything. In reality, all Amara had done was survive. His secrets had written his ending. The footage went viral within hours. The mighty businessman brought low. The faithful wife revealed as stronger than anyone imagined. But Amara didn't smile. She wasn't celebrating. This wasn't the victory she had asked for. It was justice that had finally arrived. Life after betrayal was never going to be easy. Amara faced whispers, gossip, and endless questions. Some saw her as a hero. Others painted her as a cold wife who let her husband rot in jail. But she stayed focused. She expanded her business, opened a training school for young women in event planning, and used her story as a quiet lesson. Betrayal doesn't end you. It reveals you. Efima, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. Once the bold, admired best friend, she became a cautionary tale whispered in social circles. She had gambled with betrayal and lost everything. Chike sat in prison, his once proud name dragged through the mud. Letters begging for forgiveness went unanswered. For the first time in his life, he was forced to sit with the wreckage he had created. Months later, Amara hosted the most prestigious wedding of the year, a grand event broadcast nationwide. Dressed elegantly, she walked through the venue, confident, graceful, admired by all. In interviews, she was asked how she overcame so much. She answered simply, "Betrayal looked like my end, but it was only the beginning. I realized silence is not surrender, it is preparation. And when truth comes crashing down, it crowns the one who endured." The video went viral, turning Amara into a symbol of resilience. Hashtags trended. #strength after betrayal, #Amara rises, #true queens don't bow. Her story wasn't about Chike or Fema anymore. It was about her, a woman who turned pain into power, betrayal into strength, and collapse into a crown. And as the lights of the event glittered around her, Amara knew the truth. She had not just survived betrayal. She had conquered it.